Hello, everyone. Welcome to this talk on prepping your checklist, things to do before setting up continuous testing. Now, before we move on to the talk, a little bit about myself. I'm Sneha Vishwalingam, and I'm a test automation engineer in a medical device company in Pittsburgh, USA. I'm a very passionate software tester. I'm very interested in the field of software testing, test automation, and software operations and everything that comes along with it, really. And I blog at snehavishwalingam.website. And the best way to contact me is through LinkedIn or Twitter. I will leave a link to all my contact information in the last slide. And let's move on. So before we actually start talking about continuous testing, let's briefly take a look at what really is DevOps and why is it that it became so famous and so widely accepted in the software development field, right? So DevOps really is, if you really look at it, is more like a culture and along with a set of process that really brings together the development and the operations teams together, right? And as the software becomes more and more complex, along with the complexity, the risk of failure also increases in the software. So to really keep up with the users' demands and the business demands, we need to have faster release cycles along with high quality code. So to help with achieving those faster release cycle along with quick feedback related to quality, we really needed to have more like a DevOps pipeline with continuous testing integrated in it. So one of the items to really accomplish to win in the DevOps game is to have continuous testing to make sure that we're having high quality code in the release. So what really is continuous testing? So these days many business leaders are really starting to believe that the cost of their testing would be considerably reduced if optimized if they use test automation. So to be competitive, because to be competitive, the business really needs an ability to release high quality code at any given time. So you know the testing requirements often ends up being a bottleneck when it comes to faster release cycles. So that is why continuous testing really combines the process side of things by leveraging automation, the technology side of things by using efficiency, and then the people side of things really achieving that DevOps and the quality first mindset. So the goal of continuous testing really is to provide continuous and rapid feedback regarding the level of business risk when it comes to the latest build or the release candidate that is under consideration at that point. So really early detection of defects and faster release cycles and faster use of time and improved code quality are really what makes continuous testing stand out, and that is why people are really considering continuous testing to be added to the DevOps pipeline. Now, when we talk about continuous testing, a lot of people get confused between automated testing and continuous testing. Now, automated testing and continuous testing are not really the same thing. So just because we have automated testing doesn't mean we are ready for continuous testing. Now, it is true that continuous testing can happen only if we have automated tests, but just by having automated tests alone, we are not really ready for continuous testing. So what really needs to be, what really needs to be modified for our test to be ready for continuous testing, right? So DevOps cannot be really successful without getting the basics right. So continuous testing is definitely the goal for most companies when it comes to achieving faster speed and great quality with higher degree of frequency in the release cycles. But imagine you've done all the things right. You've invested the big bucks in automation. You've leveraged DevOps and agile processes and all those things. But then But then, despite all your efforts, if your tests are slowing down the builds, and they're being flaky, they're having environment issues, and worst of all, if no one really trusts the results that's coming out of the test pipeline, it really, then what's the point, right? So in this talk we will discuss about the checklist that one should really consider before moving your automated tests into the DevOps pipeline. So now let's look at what the checklist looks like. So the first point really is to define the business expectations. It's important to understand in the continuous testing journey that there is no one size fits all solution. There's no magic quadrant of, okay, include these tests and it's going to be a success. It's really important to work according to the project that is under consideration at that time. That is why the business expectations associated with that particular application really needs to be defined. Now, when those are defined, then we are able to work with it, with the defined business expectations. Now, for that, the team ownership, team collaboration, and support from the executive leadership are all really factors that play an important role when it comes to the success of continuous testing. So it's important, to include the stakeholders into the continuous testing journey and find a better way to really communicate and collaborate into the continuous testing journey. So, and another idea is to really include the requirements team or the regulatory team as well into, the continuous testing initiative. Uh, the process will be so much more smoother if they are really involved in this process from the beginning of the journey, really. Now, on really including all of them and making sure that we have a properly defined continuous testing strategy in place, that will definitely lead to operational efficiency as well. So the next one is the defect analysis strategy. So, when we find defects that are associated with those business risks, how do we evaluate the defects when compared to the risks associated with them, right? How do we prioritize them? So once we understand what errors have been injected, do we really have a strategy for isolation? And, are we categorizing these according to the priorities so that they just don't slip away? And when we do find that there are trends associated with the defects that are found, do we really have a plan to use this feedback for future defect prevention? And do we really have distinct ownership associated with the workflow and the defect remediation? So today, when a potential defect is found, we go through a hugely iterative process where on how can you recreate it, can you define it, and things like that. Now, do we really have a very distinct path for ownership and remediation when you find a defect in the continuous testing pipeline? So these are some things to think about ahead of time, that will help with really defining your defect analysis strategy. The next one is the test maintenance strategy. With DevOps, there are some specific demands on the tester, when it comes to continuous testing, because it really impacts how we do test planning, regression, and test maintenance that comes with the new features that are being added in each cycle. So, DevOps does speed up the release of the new features, but without a strategy for continuous testing and test maintenance, it cannot really work because we really need to get the basics right. So first, we need to develop new tests for each feature as needed. And then second, we need to do regression on every single cycle. And then that is only possible with automation. So we need to add all those automation tests. And third, we need to do the test maintenance. Now, how are we planning for all these things? Are we really integrating all of this in the definition of done? In order for the tester to not become the bottleneck, we really need to plan and have a strategy for these things built within the team. So the next point is really about test environments. Virtualizing the test environment seems to be like the next big thing to really remove the bottleneck around test environment issues when it comes to continuous testing these days. According to one of the 2019 reports, the test environments are one of the biggest bottlenecks to achieving continuous testing when different organizations were interviewed. So the survey really reveals that the amount of time that organizations spend on test environment management is some of the key challenge areas when it comes to continuous testing. And this survey that I'm talking about is the SOJT 2019 continuous testing report. So continuous testing literally means that you're testing more frequently. That means you're hitting more uh, environments, right? You're hitting multiple environments more frequently, and that represents a problem, a bottleneck. If these environments are not really available at all times, sometimes for different reasons. Sometimes it could be because of limited control over the data coming from that environment, or sometimes it could just be lagging or performance issue because of which you don't get that you know you're not able to access it at that given time. So how to coordinate testing through multiple environments, right? Like sometimes you have to coordinate testing through multiple environment owners that may not always keep their environment up and running for you to test again. So mock services ended up being one of the best options. So mock services really help in those environments where it really allows us to test the code without having to worry about any dependencies with any other environments. Now, along with mock services, virtualization, containerization, and tool-based automations are also strengthening in companies to meet the demands of Agile and DevOps and everything that comes with all the problems that comes with test related to test environments. The next one is test data management. It's one of the best practices to shift left when it comes to automation and continuous delivery, continuous pipeline, and things like that. Always shifting left is considered to be the best practice. Now, when we depend on data and to the DBAs, the DBAs end up becoming a bottleneck if we depend on them later in the pipeline. So the best way is to automate the process of preparing the data as well and shift that to the left. So having production like data in your test environment is now more than ever important because everything is automated. So having the right data and the appropriate diversity of data for positive and negative scenarios is important. So that is why having a plan for data generation, maybe using off the shelf tools that are available early on in the pipeline is the way to go to achieve continuous testing with the highest level of confidence. Yeah. So that marks an end to the points that I had for keeping in mind before moving into continuous testing. Having said that, uh, making sure that the test automation actually is written in a very robust way, is very strong. It's not having flaky tests. That is something that needs to be kept in mind first before even moving into a continuous testing, because once your tests start to fail not because of actual bugs in the code but because of automation issues, then people are really going to start getting frustrated, and they will stop losing trust, and we cannot keep babysitting our code all the time, right? So making sure that the test automation is written very well without too many sleeps, following the best practices of test automation. That is something very important to keep in mind, and that definitely is the basic. And then these things are more like things that we need to think about the process as such before we move into continuous testing. Having said that, the road to continuous testing is a journey and not a destination. take baby steps, and every time we will make mistakes, and then we will learn and we will fix it. That's just how the nature of software is, right? So don't worry too much about it, and good luck with your journey. I also wanted to talk a little bit about, how COVID has affected testing. It was very interesting, because testing is often viewed as one of the biggest bottlenecks in the software development life cycle. And I think during the lockdown, not many managers would have had enough time, enough notice to prepare the team for working from home, and understandably so, because there must have been so many dependencies. Maybe someone had to work with the hardware, and maybe someone needed like a secure environment where, to access some things. So there might have been so many reasons that so many issues that the team might not have been prepared with, right? So the continuous testing kind of takes the testing phase from the end of the software development life cycle, and instead, adds it throughout. So by doing this, we're not only minimizing the amount of work that needs to be done at the end, but also preventing all these repetitive actions by instilling a higher sense of quality from the start itself, right? So continuous testing was like founded with the goal of prioritizing quality over the project's schedule. Like it was more like leading the quality will be deciding the project, and not the project will be deciding, what the timelines and all those things. So um, so that brings us to the end of, the 5 points that I had in mind uh, to talk about, to keep in mind before starting the continuous testing journey. So now let's talk about, the role of software testers in this entire journey. And I personally believe that, this is the best time for us to be a software tester, because this continuous testing is just so awesome. It's really, putting the idea of testing better in line with the business and delivering information in which, the business can make better trade-off decisions associated with an application. So it's really giving us an opportunity to understand the business side of things, to really make a difference in the process, in the technology side of things, because a software tester really has a big say in what are the tests that need to be included, and what are the tests that need to be automated, and how are we going to do this. And so I think, this is a great time in history to be a software tester, and I am definitely very excited about it and passionate about it, because we're still in early stages, and there is so much more to automate, and there's so much more to contribute. There are so many more innovations that are going to happen in this field. So this is definitely a great time for us to really make a difference in our roles and in our jobs. And we're also in this era where quality really matters, and we really have to redefine how we're going to achieve that level of quality to reduce risk. And we as testers now have really the opportunity to understand the business objectives, to really apply our knowledge to the process now more than ever, I guess, in history. And as the demand is faster and more, we really need to influence the process in order to show that quality really matters, and to show how we're going to make a difference to reduce the risk of the business that is really in our hands and more like our responsibility. I think along with the technical skills that the software tester obviously comes with, I think she also comes with a number of, soft skills and critical thinking skills. Someone has to ask questions, and someone has to keep the team in check, and when, whether the team is building the right things in the first place, whether the process we are working on can be improved, and what is going to be our plan for non-functional testing, performance testing, security testing, and things like that. Everything that comes along with with working in a big team together. So these are definitely some opportunities where a software tester can contribute by asking the right questions, and facilitating some brainstorming sessions on how we can make all these things better. And so this is also one more reason why this is such a good time to be a software tester and be a part of the DevOps team and really contribute to the mission that we are working on. So that is all I had for today. Thank you so much for being such a wonderful audience. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, here are my details. Here is my website, LinkedIn, Twitter, and my YouTube channel. So it was wonderful meeting you again, and thank you very much.